A biblical perspective on life, culture and current events. This is 2020 on Vision.
It's another opportunity to talk about some of the different dimensions of the creation and evolution debate. Our special guest today says teachers and professors who are forced to continue teaching Darwinism regarding the origin and cause of life are being forced to lie to their students. He says, what teacher or professor will want their legacy to be that they continued to teach a lie to their students when the truth was easily available? Well, we're getting an update today on the new science called atomic biology. This new science, atomic biology, sounds complex, but the founders say the basics are simple enough for a fifth grader to understand. Atomic biology's creator, Tom Rogers, is back with us today with an update on the latest developments and the newest resources. He's joining us live from Vancouver in Canada. Tom, a special welcome back to 2020.
Thank you so much, Neil. It's so good to be here.
Hey, Tom,
really
let's start with this. You say for many decades now, there's been this enforced false teaching of evolution only as the origin and cause of our life. I think you're speaking from a Canadian perspective, but that resonates very strongly here in Australia. Evolution is the only thing that's tends to be enforced in our school like that when it comes to origins. What are your reflections on the fact that this has been growing for decades?
Well, it's amazing how deceitful the public enemy number one, you know who that is, the devil himself, can influence smart people. You know, he's more clever than we humans, and we have to be aware that he's out there trying to upset things. Now, lately, since our last chat, Neil, it's really come through clear to me that Satan picked up on Darwin's theory, and he has used that now since the 1960s, to separate students from their creator. Because basically he's being banned from the public education system, and even our Christian schools here have to teach evolution, but it's a way of separating students from their creator by saying, well, evolution is the origin and cause of life, so you don't need a God for anything. And that's what's being taught, and that's our souls are being lost now.
And when you say, and I think our listeners are going to agree, these are supposedly smart people. And smart people who have got the education curriculum even in Christian schools and in Christian tertiary level institutions. You call it a foolish and harmful deception that has caused confusion, heartache and strife as a lie against our inner intuition. Deceptiveness, contradictory to the inner intuition of there being a creator God. What do you say about this deception and the way it affects us?
Well, here's the problem, Neil. We're not, and this might be part of the reason, we're not such an agricultural community now as when our founders set up our nations, okay? For them, it was so critical that their crops would grow and their animals would be made basically out of dirt. I'm going to explain that. Even our meat is made out of dirt, okay? But it goes through a two-step process, as we do. We grow foods out of the soil, okay? Now, when I say we grow them, we're not actually doing the work. It only takes a super intelligent entity, and there's only one of those known to mankind. That's our God. So he's got to make our food out of dirt and then make ourselves out of our foods, okay? So we're like Adam. We're made from the dust, the two-step process. I believe that our founders relied so much more heavily and noticeably on agriculture, and they knew that this wasn't just happening by magic, that their grains were growing and their vegetables were growing and so on. It was much more of an agricultural base. And so it was more important to them. And at that time, they didn't have this theory of evolution to replace God. That came along 160 years ago or so.
All right, now you say foods come from the soil. Okay, I'm sure the fifth grader is on board with that.
Yes.
Cells are created, and you like to use the illustration of a carrot that really hits home this idea that in all of our intelligence, we've not been able to create the cells that will grow a carrot. Take us into the simplistic nature of how that process works.
Okay, well, the process itself is highly complex, but the concept that it has to be done by a superintelligent being, that is the simple part. And here's how we prove that now. And this, since we talked to you last, this evidence has become really clear. And that is that for over 70 years, scientists have been trying to make a living cell out of elements. We can't come anywhere close. Even the best labs with the vast accumulation of scientific knowledge and the highly sophisticated equipment shows us that even with that, we cannot come close to building even one cell. Even a living molecular machine, of which our cells can have up to 40 of, we can't make those. The best that I know of so far is Craig Vender's lab. He was a big contributor to the Genome Project, the Human Genome Project, and he's got a great lab. He can make a copy of a small piece of a cell and transplant that into another living cell. But that is miles and miles and miles from making a carrot out of dirt. So the point is that let's say one day even Vender's lab can make a living cell. It still takes humongous intelligence, and evolution claims not to have any. Like they've taken intelligent design people to court and say, no, this is just a religion in disguise. Intelligence isn't needed for life. It's all done by evolution. And that is a lie. Evolution can't even start building a living cell.
Okay, the concept is what's simple. The process is so complex that you're saying that a super intelligence is needed for that process to happen. Now,
Yes.
Take us into how atomic biology looks when you take things below the surface and you get into the atomic level.
Okay. So I think this is why scientists have not gone to the atomic level before, because when you get to that level of sorting atoms, you got to find the right atoms. You've got to sort them, select the right numbers. So you have to count them. And you have to have the right numbers of the right atoms to build every part of a living cell. And our cells can have up to 40 molecular machines. And I first quoted back in 2016 the Nobel Prize winners in chemistry who had spent 33 years to make some little non-living, simplistic molecular machines. They will only move if you stimulate them with ultraviolet light or equivalent. they're so simplistic compared to our simplest living cells that there's really no comparison. And of course, they're not alive, and that's the next thing that man can't do. Man could not add life to inanimate atoms. Okay? Another proof that it takes this super intelligent entity we call our Creator, and He's the God of our nations. Okay.
All right, we're going to come back and we'll talk some more about those atoms and sorted and counted and put together and moving all together in a special alignment. And there might be listeners who have questions about how all of that sort of thing works. But just quickly, you're in Vancouver, Canada. Here we are in Australia, both very secularized nations, Tom. And we have some things in common, though. God is highly recognized by our governments, as He is in Western nations. Got our national holidays, Christmas and Easter, Good Friday and Resurrection Day. God's prominent in our justice systems, in our constitutions. But you say, given all of this focus that has built our nations on God, that our governments actually miss something, an inalienable right to be taught about this God who is recognized by our governments. How do you reflect on the fact that our governments are missing something when it comes to this intuitive idea that God is the one who's making all these things happen?
A big part of the problem, Neil, is that the heads of the university curriculum, in biology especially, are saying that it's not God, it's evolution. You don't need a God because evolution does this business of creating living beings, basically. And no explanation. They talk about fossils, and most of those are false, where there's some indication of a transition between two different types of species, but there really hasn't been one clear-cut transitional entity from one type of a species to another. Okay, but it's still being taught as if it were true, and so our job now is to prove that that's wrong, and that if people keep teaching that, forcing teachers and professors to teach that evolution is the cause of life, they're forcing the teachers to lie to their students.
This is 2020 with Neil Johnson, helping you make sense of life, culture and current events from a biblical perspective.
Wonderful to have you with us on this Friday edition of 2020. Our talkback line is open on 1800 316 316. You can send us a text on 0447 488 316. We're talking about atomic biology with the creator of atomic biology, Tom Rogers, who's back with us today. He's live with us from Vancouver in Canada. So I'd love to hear from you. You might have a question, you might have a comment about the things we're talking about today. Tom, let's talk about some of the mind-boggling numbers. Once we start to go a little deeper into this atomic level, explain how that works with atoms and the reason why those sorts of ideas that people have from an evolutionary perspective just can't work. Take us into some of that depth.
Okay, well, it's interesting that it's on this particular part of the subject. And incidentally, I want to say that there's a nickname for atomic biology called God's biology, so it's a little more friendly. Okay. And it is God's biology. What changed me from the curiosity as a new believer, coming from a background in research and engineering, construction, manufacturing, when I finally saw the light, my first question was, okay, how does this creator actually build living things? And it didn't take me 2 minutes to realize that evolution is not the answer, because the complexity was just way beyond any unguided process. So what changed me from a part-time curiosity to a full-time endeavor on this idea of atomic biology was in looking at our red blood cells. And what I do, I pieced together information from 3 different scientists, and I don't think it had been done before. But a fellow by the name of Pallister said that a 150-pound male gets about 2.3 million new red blood cells every second, because they all have to be replaced for everybody in about 120 days, because they wear out. They don't absorb oxygen efficiently, and then deliver that to different parts of the body, then pick up the carbon dioxide and expel that. So they wear out in about 120 days, have to be replaced. So for a 150-pounder, 2.3 million new red blood cells per second. So that's Pallister. Then a fellow by the name of Tortora explained that every red blood cell has about 280 million molecules of hemoglobin. Okay? So start thinking mathematics here. The next fellow, Max Perut, says that every molecule of hemoglobin has about almost 10,000 correctly sorted, counted, selected, and placed atoms, okay, in every molecule of hemoglobin. So we've got 10,000 atoms per molecule of hemoglobin, 280 million molecules of hemoglobin, and 2.3 million of those created every second. So the math says 6,400 quadrillion correct atoms per second, 24/7, just to make new red blood cells for a 150-pounder. So you can take your own weight, put it over 150 pounds, might be more, might be less, multiply it times 6,400 quadrillion, and that tells you how many atoms per second God is arranging, assembling for you every second, just for your red blood cells. So that's about 20 trillion red blood cells, and you've got about another 80 trillion cells that have to be sustained and maintained and repaired and replaced. So people have no clue the kind of work our Creator is doing inside of us every second of every day. And that's what I would like to point out to people, so they've got an idea of how much this Creator cares for them as an individual and does all this work for no compensation, whether we thank him or not.
All right.
So I've done another booklet here, Neil, just a quick addition. One of the 50-page booklets is called God is in the Grocery Store, because I want people to get the idea that when they see all those potatoes and apples and oranges and peas and carrots and things, God has made them for their life, and for his part of it, he didn't charge a dime, okay? The farmer has to get paid, the trucker has to get paid, the grocery store has to get paid. God doesn't get paid, okay? But he does this out of love for us.
All right, okay. God is in the grocery store, and we might come back to some more concepts around that. We're taking calls on 1-800-316 316. You can also send us a text on 0447 488 316. Let's take a call. Henry is in Margate in Queensland. Hey, Henry, welcome along.
Oh, hello, Neil. How are you?
Very well, Henry. What are your thoughts as you're listening to some of these numbers being crunched here?
Yeah. Well, anyway, I reckon evolution is so ridiculous, but that's the big lie that the world gives us. But I've always thought if evolution is real, Why don't we see new fruit trees evolving or new species of birds or fish in the sea? Everything's the same since I've been here. If evolution is true, shouldn't there be other things evolving in this world?
Henry, good thought. And sometimes people talk about a microevolution and mutations and changes, which are normal and natural. But let's get a thought or two from the expert on atomic biology, Tom Rogers. Your thoughts here for Henry.
Exactly right. And even Darwin himself said that this is where his theory could absolutely break down. If the fossil record didn't show the billions of transitions that there should be there between species changing from one kind to another kind, if those weren't found, then that would absolutely falsify his theory. So even Darwin was concerned about that. Now he thought that maybe in 1859 and earlier the fossils hadn't been widely enough collected, so they may find these transitions, but truth of the matter is they haven't really found any true complete transitions in all this time. And finding all these millions and millions of fossils, they haven't found the transitions, so it's still a problem.
Henry, more to add?
Oh, yeah, well, just another thing is just when a baby's born, if you took that baby and isolated it, and that baby never heard anyone speaking, it wouldn't be able to learn how to speak, would it?
I'm not sure. Tom, thoughts here for Henry?
Yes, indeed. Well, this brain of ours, Henry, is so incredible. And when people are little, when they're babies, their brain is absorbing so much, so fast, and collecting it and learning how to use it. However, it's a matter of copying. Like they don't originate words and things. That has to be taught to them, but they can absorb it and learn it. And so, yeah, the brain is there, but unless there's a good teacher, the brain isn't going to learn the right things. And unfortunately, in this world, some people that are parents should never have been parents in the first place. And they don't treat their children right, and they don't teach their children right. And that's an unfortunate situation in our world today, but that's how it is.
Tom, why don't we take another call? Wendy is waiting patiently from Kununurra in Western Australia. Hey, Wendy, welcome along.
Hey, welcome, guys. Yes, patience is one of the fruits of the spirit that I'm coming to grasp with the last few years. But look, what you're talking about is so amazing, and I love it. Unfortunately, I'm not able to remember all that stuff. But I've got lots of family. They put on posts on Facebook and things like that about this rock they found at 693 million years old. What is the best way to talk to family? And this is family that's not Christian. How do I talk to them about those truths that you're talking about today? And is there somewhere that I can find them easy enough on the net or something that I can forward it to them?
Okay, well, let's talk resources here. Your response here for Wendy, when she's confronted with all of these things and people are talking about 600 plus million years. Tom, your thoughts here for Wendy?
Okay, well, just addressing the time problem, how old the world is and so on, we don't go there because we don't know. And even the people that have the long Earth, old Earth concept keep changing it, and they keep adding millions of years because it takes so long to make mutations into some different species. So they keep adding years. Anyway, so we don't go there. We're more interested in what God is doing right now, today, for everybody, every second of every day, okay? And he is doing this incredible work in each one of us, and nobody is taught that. And it's time people realize how much this Creator cares for each one of us all the time. There's a huge amount of work there. I mean, it's so so mind-boggling. That idea about the red blood cells was the thing that changed me. But the work is precise. I'll come back to Wendy's idea of some information. We do have a textbook, probably too technical for most people, but we also have 3 booklets. Like 2 of them are about 50 pages, and the last one that's just coming off now is 30 pages. Okay, so small, concise, fairly simple. Even the name, we don't use atomic biology as a name, more for it's more for technical people. So God's biology is what we talk to people about from a layman's point of view. And this work, I think, Wendy, is what may convince your friends and family that are maybe not Christians yet, and that is what it takes just to build your food out of the soil in gardens and fields and orchards and the ocean. It doesn't just happen. It takes super intelligence, because what is being made, the living cells that are being made, are all so complex. Even the ones for our vegetables are very similar to our own cells. To make things grow, it needs this complex arrangement of atoms to make everything work, and they're not all the same by a long shot. There's like as many as 40 different molecular machines in one living cell. We've heard more probably about DNA, for example, and this was another fascinating part to me about the precision involved in making us. And in our DNA.
Well, let's enlarge on that in a few moments, Tom. Wendy's not with us. She's hung up. But let's just before we talk DNA, just say atomicbiology.com is the website, and looking for resources. God's Biology, Darwin's Replacement. That's the newest book released just early this year. And you're co-author of Darwin's Replacement, Introducing the Godly Life Science of Atomic Biology as the Replacement for Darwin's Theory of Evolution. You've got these books, a 320-page textbook, now 3 booklets. So yes, the resource is growing. The place to look for those, though, atomicbiology.com. Come back now to DNA, because this is not necessarily cells. DNA is a little bit different to that. DNA is incredible, and everybody agrees with that. What were you enlarging on around DNA?
Well, one comment was made by Bill Gates from Microsoft that a lot of people are aware of, and he said that DNA is like a sophisticated computer program, but far more complex than anything they have ever made at Microsoft. Okay, and they've got some very fancy new developments in their AI and so on. So he's saying that human DNA, for example, is far more complex than anything they've made. And I wanted to point out the precision that it takes to make our DNA, okay? Because we have different DNA for different cells, 200 approximately different types of cells in our body, and the DNA is different in each one. So there are these 4 parts of the DNA that make it work when they're arranged properly, and that's the key. And they have to be made this precisely, Neil. Adenine is made with 5 atoms of carbon, 5 of hydrogen, 5 of nitrogen. Okay, so that's one of the bases in our DNA. Guanine, the next one, is virtually the same: 5 atoms of carbon, 5 of hydrogen, 5 of nitrogen, 1 of oxygen. That's the only difference between those two bases, okay? Then the next one, cytosine, 4 atoms of carbon, 5 of hydrogen, 3 of nitrogen, 1 of oxygen. So again, pretty similar, but different enough to make this very complex thing. And thymine is similar. So then they're connected together in pairs. So to make one strand of DNA in one of our cells takes about 3 billion pairs. Okay, so pairs of these bases. So anyway, it's just part of the complexity that's going on within us.
So when we talk about DNA, because that's made of atoms as well, and you're saying you can actually tell how the DNA is made up of those atoms, but the precision of the arrangements, which is not the fact that they're just there, but under the evolutionary style theory, they would have to find their way into the right places. Where you're saying the super intelligence is necessary is that God has actually been able to arrange them in such a way that they actually do form the DNA strand, or they do form the cells. Hey, we're taking calls, 1-800-316-316. Let's get another call. Janet is in Perth, WA. Hey, Janet, welcome.
Good morning, gentlemen. Yes, I'm very interested in the subject of evolution and creation, and I'd just like to comment that it has been said that current science, which is marvellous, it's given us machinery and computers and modern medications, and it's all to do with things that can be tested and demonstrated so that people can learn how these things work with the laws of physics and chemistry and what have you. However, observational science is vastly different from historical science because the past is gone and we don't know how things happened. Take the Tower of Eiffel, the Eiffel Tower, for instance. How do you know who built it, how high it is, that statistics of dimensions and so on? It's because we have reports of somebody who saw it being built. The French people have historically accounted that a fellow called Eiffel built it, and according to these stipulations and so on. So we know about the Eiffel Tower, but from the beginning of the world, no one was there except one person, and that was the person who did it, and he's left a record for us what we need to know about it. And he is trustworthy and he doesn't tell lies. So we have to take his word for it, whereas all the scientific data of fossils and rock layers and so on, it's up to the interpretation of the person who observes it. And if this person has got a preconceived worldview, they will interpret this according to their worldview. And if they need millions of years, well, these days that's not long enough. It's billions of years now, isn't it, for different things to change. But that's how what evolution needs. We know one species doesn't evolve
Janet,
into
you're
another.
making some great points here. Let's bring Tom back into the conversation here. Tom, thoughts here for Janet?
Well, I think that she's getting at the knowledge of the builder, as in the Eiffel Tower. The builder knew from all his design work what it took to do that. And it took a lot of intelligence to build the Eiffel Tower. I think everybody will agree. Didn't just appear. And living things, every living cell doesn't just come together. It's precisely built, very complex. They're different cell to cell, and only the builder can build it. Now, as scientists, we're figuring out what it consists of, all the different parts of the cell, but assembling atoms to make those parts and providing the breath of life into those inanimate atoms is something we will probably never be able to do.
Wonderful.
So again, we come back to the builder, and that's our God.
Well, I've got Janet on the line. Great illustration, Janet, around the Eiffel Tower. But where does revelation from God come into all of this? Because revelation from God declares his own builder status, doesn't it? The builder, not just of the carrots in the soil, but the whole heavens and the earth. We're talking about the entire universe here. How do you approach, the way that God has revealed himself as the builder through the sorts of things we're talking about atomic biology here, Tom?
Mm-hmm. So the verses in the Bible say that anybody that really looks at flowers and trees and birds and bees, they're without excuse if they don't think there's a builder behind them. Okay, they're without excuse. Now, the evolutionists who don't want there to be a God, basically, this is their whole point. And I've got a quote here from a evolutologist from Harvard, and if I may quote what he has to say, this is where our problem's coming from. So this is a Harvard biology professor, Richard Lewontin, and he says this: we take the side of evolutionary science in spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs. Okay, this is an evolutionist talking. In spite of the patent absurdity of some of its constructs, in spite of its failure to fulfill many of its extravagant promises of health and life, in spite of the tolerance of the scientific community for unsubstantiated, just so stories, because we have a prior commitment, a commitment to materialism, which is evolution. It is not that the methods and institutions of science somehow compel us to accept a material explanation of the phenomenal world, but on the contrary, that we are forced by our a priori adherence to material causes to create an apparatus of investigation and a set of concepts that produce material explanations, no matter how counterintuitive, no matter how mystifying to the uninitiated. Moreover, that materialism or evolution is absolute, for we cannot allow a divine foot in the door. Bottom line, they don't want God. And so they make up all this other stuff to get away from God, and they enforce the teaching of it to separate our students from their Creator.
Worldview, a huge issue there. I want to thank Janet in Perth for a great contribution today. Worldview, scientists who don't want there to be a God because they have a commitment to materialism, and that flows through to our curriculums, whether it's school or university level. Text from James in Kyabram in Victoria, who says, definitely praying about this, Daniel 12. Those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. Proverbs 18:15, an intelligent heart acquires knowledge, and the ear of the wise seeks knowledge, praying for students. And many of the scales come off the eyes of the curriculum providers to see the need for true knowledge. So there's a way you can pray about this, because yes, it's bigger than just pitting one science against another physics, and then divine revelation in the mix there, because the ones who are shaping our curriculum have a commitment to materialism. Hey, we're taking calls on 1800 316 316. I've got a caller on the line who's a good mate of yours, Graham McLennan.
All right.
Graham McLennan, welcome along.
G'day, Tom. Good night, Neil.
Hey, Graham, good to hear you.
Yeah. I've been reflecting on what you're saying and actually what Dr. William West said yesterday. But as Christians, we should believe in a biblical Christian worldview. And then from Genesis 1:11 right through several verses, it talks about God creating all vegetation, plants, with bearing seeds and fruit and so on, and as well as creatures, sea creatures and land creatures and so on, according to their kind. The key word is according to their kind. And Darwinism says that that doesn't occur. It's developed through evolution, of course. And his theory states in the heading that it's through the superiority of species through natural selection. And my point I'd like to make is that the cause of bullying is part of Darwinian theory, and a lot of racism has occurred because of it. The extermination of people, particularly in the early times in Germany during the Second World War, there are people exterminated on that belief. And so we have a problem in our education system where bullying occurs and they can't get rid of it. And that's because they're teaching to be bullies. And so our education system is really delinquent in a lot of ways. But also, as far as our ancestry is concerned, Karl Marx says that the people who don't know their history or ancestry can be easily persuaded. And my own history, I can record in our books on our clan, go back to Adam and Eve through Seth and Enoch and Noah and kings of Spain and kings of Ireland and so on, and even the saints. But I just think that that's over 6,000 years. So we do have a problem about all this business, and even with our Indigenous, how old they are and so on. So my two questions are, how do we stop bullying when we teach evolution? And the other thing is we don't know our history, and therefore we can be easily persuaded.
All right. Tom, one of your good mates. Tom, what are your thoughts here for Graham?
Well, I think that our goal of bringing God back into the classroom with all the wisdom that he can provide is going to go some distance towards stopping the bullying. What happened when Madalyn Murray O'Hair and some atheists persuaded the American Supreme Court to take Bible reading and the Lord's Prayer out of the education system? This is 1963, and almost immediately things started going so crazy for young people with the drug abuse, the unwanted babies, the depression, anxiety, all these things accelerated immensely because their moral compass was gone when God was taken out of the classroom, basically. So bringing the God of our nations back to the classroom is going to help to bring that morality back. It's going to help save some souls that would otherwise be lost. And it's so important. I would say that millions of souls have been lost through this teaching that we don't need God for anything because evolution does it all. I really believe that we've lost millions of souls because of that teaching, and that's another huge reason for bringing them back in the classroom.
All right, I want to thank Graham for his call, and time has run out. And I want to be able to just reflect back to what we started saying right at the beginning of our conversation, Tom, where we were talking about God and the classroom and the fact that, these days you say that there has been an enforced false teaching of evolution only in the classroom, and just these last few minutes, some good reasons why you would want to bring God back into the classroom, but no one will until they are confident that bringing God back into the classroom is something they can argue well. And certainly the sorts of things that you write about give a whole new dimension to the way that we talk about creation and evolution. But you might want to get a hold of some resources, and I'll point you to atomicbiology.com, atomicbiology.com. There's some books there you might want to get a hold of. God's Biology, Darwin's Replacement. That's the latest one. He's our guest today, Tom, is also co-author of Darwin's Replacement, introducing the godly life science of atomic biology as the replacement for Darwin's theory of evolution. His co-author on that was the caller we just had a short while ago, Graham McLennan. You might want to get a hold of those books. You might want to see who's on the team with Tom Rogers at Atomic Biology Institute. atomicbiology.com. Now, you can get those books at online booksellers. As simple as Googling those and finding Amazon, you'll be able to find those books, Tom Rogers, remember that name, and atomicbiology.com. Now, if you want multiples of those books, and some people are able to get a hold of 5, 10, 100, 1,000 of these books, you can get a discount from the website at atomicbiology.com. There's so much more to talk about. We could keep this conversation going for a long, long time, but we've already been talking for an hour. Tom Rogers, thank you so much for taking some time to share your thoughts and your update insights with us today on 2020.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Neil. I don't know if this is really a historic time where we change the world from this idea that evolution is the cause of life and get rid of that. But we're part of it, and it might not happen in our lifetime, but at least we'll get it started. Okay?
Yeah, there's a conversation that has to be had, and there's an argument that has to be made, and it might not happen any other place other than places like here, a conversation on 2020. So, Tom, you've done a valuable work. Thanks so much for your insights today on 2020.
Thanks for taking time to listen to this audio on demand from Vision Christian Media. To find out more about us, go to vision.org.au.